This is Susan Allen with the quiltasylum.com, and I'm here today with part 2 of our hand piecing lesson, piecing curves. As you can see, I have 2 curves that are going to fit together. If you put them edge to edge, they don't look like they fit, but if you were to overlap the 1/4 inch seam allowance, they're going to fit just perfectly. The first thing, if you turn them over, you can see I have the seam lines marked. We need to find the center of this seam line. Most people would just fold in half and let it go and find your center. I'm a little pickier than that. I like to fold it in half, but I like to take my pin, put it in the corner dot, over to the corner dot, just to make sure that I am dead accurate on my center. And if I put that pin parallel, straight up and down, not tilted, straight up and down, and come over and make a finger crease, take my pin out. You can see where my crease is, and I'm going to take a pin and I'm going to mark right there. I'm going to mark in the seam allowance where center is. If you have a very large curve, I have gone so far as to take the next part, go dot to center, and then mark the quarters, like so. Now these are not 100% accurate because I'm not using my pen, but you can segment your curve into halves, quarters. If it's really big, you could even go into eighths. But by folding from mark to mark, you always know that you're dead center where your next mark is. So let's start sewing. Another thing we want to talk about is clipping the curve. When you trace your templates on the curve, you want as much curve on the bias as possible, because the more bias, the more stretch. Had this discussion with Jen Kingwell. She clips nothing. I'm a little clippier than that, so I may take my scissors and just make a couple of little clips. Let's call it 3/4 of a way into the seam allowance. You don't want to get close to your seam line, because then you may go too far, and that's not going to help you at all. Always put the concave on top. Think about it this way, how I remember concave from convex. Caves go in the ground. Caves dip down. So concave is the down curve. Convex is the up curve. So I'm going to always start with my pin in the middle. So I'm going to go in this middle mark, turn my piece over, find my middle mark here. Now a pretty big clue on if you're straight is the part that peeks out on the bottom. I want my pin as vertical as possible, and I want this to look even. I hope you can see that. There's my pin, here's my point. If this point is swung way over here, then I'm not straight up and down on my registration mark. So I'm going to swing that around here, like so. Make sure it's straight up and down. Grab my pin again. These two edges should meet. Make my pin vertical and take my bite. Now I'm going to take my corner, match those corners, put a pin in the dot, come back, put my pin in the dot, and I want to manipulate my seam allowance, manipulate the piece to where my pin is vertical and my seam allowance is matched right on top of the pin. And now I'll take my bite. You can go ahead and put a third pin in the center. If you can see, I'm using my thumbs to move that piece up to where both seam allowances meet each other. If I put a pin in the middle, check it on the back, we're right there on the line. I apologize for my voice. Allergies in Texas are really bad right now. So now I'm ready to sew. So I have my thread, my needle threaded with red thread again. Again, I'm using red so that you can see what I'm doing. I would normally use a light gray. And I'm going to start and stop just like I did before. So if you can see, I manipulated this piece to bring it up to where those look pretty even. I'm going to take a couple of stitches to the hole. I am right there on the line. I'm only working about this much at a time, so I'm on the line with my seam. I'm going to come back, hold that little tail so he doesn't pull out. Again, I hope you've watched our first hand piecing video on straight lines. You can see that I'm using both hands. I use my needle hand and my thumb. So now I'm just using my thumb to push that concave curve up to the top. Take a couple stitches. I'm a little low. There, I'm on the line. I'll take a back stitch to lock that little segment. I'm good. You can see I'm good right here. I need to move this piece up so this line matches the line on the back. Just a little zhooshing. That looks nice. This is kind of like watching paint dry, but it's a process. Good. Couple more stitches. Good. And with curves, sometimes you only take 2 stitches at a time, and that's okay. I'm going to lock this with my back stitch, park my needle. So now I need to pin this end. I'm going to line up as best I can, dot to dot. It's pretty right on. I'm going to zhuzh the middle. Get my seam allowances lined up right here at my thumb. Pin. Now I can keep moving forward. Again, I'm just working a couple of stitches at a time, using my thumb to move that seam allowance, that concave seam up to the convex. Take a back stitch. Looks good. Back stitch at the pin. Take that pin out. Oops, need to push a little higher. I always check myself underneath, especially on a curve. To the end. Looks good. Turn my piece around. Go back the way I came. Take my pin out. Clip my thread. And there you have, finger press, a nice, even, perfect pieced curve. Easy as pie. Just take your time. Excuse me. Take your time. Use your thumb to move that seam allowance up to match the seam allowance in the back so that the edges are even. A couple of stitches at a time. Take your time. curves are no problem. Again, this is Susan Allen from thequiltasylum.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.